Welcome in for some extra post-game coverage here on the Built-in Buffalo Network as we are brought to you by Monster Energy. This is Kevin Siracuse with you here for another edition of Cuse's Corner. As the Buffalo Bills handle business in Detroit, they take down the 12-1 Lions to drop them to 12-2. The Bills improved to 11-3. The Kansas City Chiefs did win today, but Patrick Mahomes is week to week with that ankle injury. So the 1 seed is still in play, but the main thing is the Bills took care of business. They got back in the win column after that, I don't want to say crappy performance last week in Los Angeles because Josh Allen was just amazing, but it was you could definitely say it was a subpar performance from the defense, the special teams, and the coaching staff last week in LA. But today was a complete dominant victory, a full 60 minutes that the Bills put out there today, and that could be a potential Super Bowl preview, and we were not let down one bit. Now, there are a lot of different things that we need to talk about after that game, but let's just start at the top because Josh Allen put on another clinic today, just putting up these astronomical numbers and further proving why he needs to be the 2024 NFL MVP. And someone who grew up during the drought, I would watch Brian Moorman and Ryan Lundell have more productive games than whoever was lining up under center for the Bills. But now being able to live in the same world as Josh Allen when he is literally breaking NFL records week after week, I mean, man, what a time to be alive. So if you look at Josh's stats today, he was 23 of 34 for 362 yards and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, no sacks once again, and his rating was 122.4. Then on the ground, he had 11 carries for 68 yards and 2 touchdowns. So now let's take a look at some of the historical stats that came out from this game. So with Josh Allen throwing for 2 touchdowns and rushing for 2 touchdowns, it marked the 6th career such game and extended the NFL record that he established last week. So he just finds ways to keep one-upping himself each and every week. So if you look at this, that came out from the Bills PR department after the game. Josh Allen is the first player in NFL history to record multiple passing touchdowns, multiple rushing touchdowns, 350-plus passing yards, and 60-plus rushing yards in the same game. And one more stat, because, they just keep coming with Josh. He now has 64 career rushing touchdowns, which only trails Thurman Thomas by one all-time for the most in Bills history. And he was just at 59 last week, and you're thinking, okay, maybe he can get there this year. He almost got there in 2 games. So speaking of running backs, I love what Joe Brady's been able to do with this running back core here with James Cook, Ty Johnson, and Ray Davis, because Ty Johnson is that perfect RB2, RB3. He's a perfect complement to James Cook. And he was actually the leading Bills receiver today, as he was the first Bills running back to surpass 100 receiving yards since Fred Jackson did so in 2010. You move down here to James Cook, 14 carries for 105 yards, which was a 7.5 average, and 2 touchdowns. He now has 13 on the season, which extends his career high for the collegiate ranks and the professional ranks. But those 13 touchdowns now ties him for 3rd most rushing touchdowns in a single season all time by a Bill. Only O.J. Simpson and Josh Allen have run for more. You move over to the right side here because the history just keeps coming, and Sean McDermott has now led the Bills to 11-plus wins in 5 consecutive seasons, becoming just the 5th coach in NFL history to ever do so, and the other coaches were Tom Landry, Tony Dungy, Andy Reid, and Bill Belichick. Moving down the list, Buffalo became the 5th team all-time to score 30-plus points in 8 straight games. The Bills scored 40-plus points in consecutive games for the 3rd time in team history. And for the first time in team history, the Bills had one running back who had more than 100 rushing yards and a different running back who had more than 100 receiving yards. Now, in the theme of talking about some stats here, let's talk about the Bills' run defense, because this was a big, glaring hole coming into this game, coming off of that game in Los Angeles where they just got gashed last week. And I was like, man, you're facing the number 4 rushing attack in the NFL, led by David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, the 2-headed monster who have double-digit touchdowns each so far this season. They're both on pace to have more than 1,000 rushing yards this season. Gibbs already has more than 1,000. And they are one of the best duos that we've seen in some time. And Dan Campbell, bite the kneecaps. He knows how to use those physical backs to his advantage. And it was just a very, very balanced offense, because if you looked at some of the team stats, Detroit was top 5 in pretty much every offensive statistical category. They were number 1 in scoring, and even defense, they were top 10. So I was like, man, going into this game, it's going to be a tough challenge, especially I haven't even mentioned yet, the Bills were without starting cornerback Rasul Douglas, starting safety Taylor Rapp, and other starting safety DeMar Hamlin. So you saw guys like Cole Bishop step up, Kareem Jackson, who had to come into the game. Cam Lewis got the nod starting opposite Cole Bishop. Kyer Elam also made the start outside on the boundary opposite of Christian Benford, who is a complete dog. But going into this game, I was like, man, the Bills have a lot to go up against here. And it starts with winning the line of scrimmage. And I wasn't sure if they were going to be able to do that. But check out these stats. So I mentioned David Montgomery. His rushing stat line today, 5 rushes, 4 yards, 0 touchdowns. The Bills held the 4th best rushing attack to just 48 yards today. The Lions were averaging over 151 yards per game prior to today's game. So just a great job from the Bills defense, led by, I know there are a lot of guys who made some plays, but I want to highlight Ed Oliver, who had 10 pressures today, which is the most by a defensive tackle this season. So the Bills had 3 sacks today. Oliver had one of them. Greg Rousseau had another one. And Christian Benford, the aforementioned Christian Benford, has had his first career sack as well. And another thing that I liked about the Bills defense, they were sprinkling in Dorian Williams and Balen Spector because Dorian got a little bit banged up there, but they were giving the Lions some 4-3 looks. And we talked about this on the Going Deep Buffalo podcast, whether or not the Bills could change their defensive strategy, and they did. So props to Sean McDermott and Bobby Babbage for coming out of that nickel-based defense that they play so much and so often. And it seems like they will never come out of it sometimes unless they absolutely have to. But again, huge credit to both of those guys for trying to mix some things up, put Dorian Williams out there because Dorian is a lot better against the run than he is a pass. And when Spector came in, I mean, he kind of got turned around by that Dan Skipper touchdown. But either way, I like that the Bills are trying to show different looks just to change it up a bit because Taron Johnson is great, and he made a great recovery to seal the game there with that onside kick. And he made a lot of big defensive plays as well. But I don't think that Taron Johnson is best suited for matchups like this. I know you trust him because he is arguably the best nickel corner in the game, and he plays a lot bigger than he is. He plays like that third linebacker, but I just like to be able to platoon some of these guys, right? Like mix in Dorian a little bit. If you have to do Spector, I'm not as big of a fan about Spector, but I just like the fact that they're trying to, give these offenses different looks when you have a run-heavy team like the Lions, or maybe if you get in the playoffs and you have to face the Ravens and Derrick Henry. Just change things up. Don't be so static. Now, another cool stat that I have, flipping it back to the offense, check this one out. So the Bills scored 48 points and had 559 total yards of offense, and Amari Cooper did not have one single target. So you might look at that and say, well, that's kind of concerning because he's supposed to be wide receiver 1. Concerning in the sense that what if this happens where he's fizzled out of the offense, and in a game where you need him, we would like to see him get more touches. But overall, I mean, I think that is a great stat because I'm looking at it from the glass half full perspective as you didn't even get him his targets, his receptions, his yards, and you just put up astronomical numbers with Ty Johnson leading the way, with Keon Coleman with an incredible 64-yard catch. Coleman's back from injury. Dalton Kincaid had a couple of really nice grabs. He almost had a receiving touchdown. Just an amazing chest pass from Josh Allen that got called back for a stupid penalty that they called a hold on David Edwards. That really would have been the defining MVP moment. For as many defining moments as Josh has had, that one essentially would have given him the MVP on the spot, but the refs decided to call it back and the Bills had to settle for a field goal. But either way, I think after a game like this, it's Josh Allen's award to lose right now. Now, I did mention the field goal. I should probably touch on Tyler Bass because it is inexcusable to miss a 24-yard field goal when you're indoors. But props to Bass for coming back, made a lot of big extra points and a lot of big field goals that didn't allow the Lions to really get back in this game. And they almost did. But again, thank you to Taron Johnson, and you are lucky, Matthew Smiley. So next up for the Bills will be the New England Patriots next Sunday at 1 o'clock. Finally, we get some home games in December, followed by the New York Jets, and then they go to Foxborough to close out in New England. But next week against the Patriots, I believe, right before I started recording this, I believe that I saw that the Bills open up as 14-point favorites, which might be one of the biggest spreads of the year. So it might be one of those cheaper games if you're like me and you didn't want to drop $400 to see some of these games. This is a game that you should definitely get to because again, the 1 seed is still in play, especially with Carson Wentz probably going to be under center for the Chiefs now. And it's just so much fun to watch Josh Allen play football right now because it's like, okay, he was great against the Chiefs, even better against the 49ers, even better against the Rams. Now he just puts up more incredible plays and numbers today against the Lions. I don't even know. I can't even rank him. Was he better today than he was last week? I know they lost last week, but he just, again, he keeps finding ways to get better and better. So what is he going to do next week against New England? We shall find out. But thank you for watching another edition of Cuse's Corner right here on the Built-in Buffalo Network. Go Bills.